I've been growing tomatoes in my greenhouse for 12 years now, and I have so much success. I know I can reliably grow tomatoes in here. This year I'm doing an experiment where I'm actually growing tomatoes outside in the garden too, which for a lot of you guys might not seem like a big deal, but for me here in the central belt of Scotland it's less common than you might think. That poses some problems that I have to think about and come up with a solution for, and that's what we've been doing over the last week. Growing in the greenhouse has a certain element of ease to it because my greenhouse is designed for this very purpose. Along the eaves of the greenhouse there are holes put into the frame that I can easily tie a string to for supporting my plants, or even if I'm using bamboo canes and the like, I can tie them in at the top so everything's nice and secure. And I have the option, I can do the old traditional method where you can wind the string around the stem and the plant will grow and the string will support it. Or, as I prefer to do, I prefer to use these tomato clips which just attach themselves to the string and you clip them shut, and as you can see it'll hold the tomato in place and support it and guide it, but it doesn't actually damage the stem in any way. I don't necessarily have that same ease for growing out in the garden. So Kate and I spent a little bit of time over the last few weeks doing a bit of research and thinking about how this would work best for us and our garden specifically. Because if you go out there and just do a simple internet search, you'll get tens of videos and blog posts and suggestions, everyone telling you about how their way is the absolute best way to do this. And for them, they probably are. But we needed to find the one that would work for us. And we had a few things that we were kind of thinking about that were important to us that we wanted to do with this. So we came up with this system. So because it's a test, I didn't want to put a permanent system in place or even put something together that was going to be a lot of work or effort, where we're going to have to go and buy lots of materials to make it, or even buy something, because there are lots of options. We wanted to try and do this with things we already had in the garden. Things like our bamboo canes, plenty of string, the net frames that are already on our beds, and that was key because if this doesn't work, everything will go back to the way it was before. But even if this is fantastic, come the end of summer when we're not growing tomatoes anymore, I want to be able to go back to using my hoop frames for my nets or for a poly cover for the bed. So I don't want to take all of this off. So we came up with this system. Now, it's not new, we didn't invent it. We're using a system called Florida weave or the basket weave to support the tomatoes because where we're situated, we're on the coast, but we're also surrounded by a lot of farmland and open land, so it can get quite windy in our garden, especially in this section. So we wanted something that was going to support the tomatoes even on a windy day. Now, I did think bamboo canes might have offered a bit more support in this scenario than string, although you can see I've got both here and I'll explain that. But I didn't want to just have lots of bamboo canes in the bed. And then there's always that thing of if one tomato plant just isn't as well staked or whatever, you can still lose it. So looking at the Florida weave method, it supports all of the plants. Therefore I think creating a slightly stronger, more stable structure. So that's why we went with it. Now, we built it using these bamboo canes because we already had them. And what we've done is we fixed them into the bed using some screw-in eye bolts, and they're holding the canes in place, as well as we've pushed them into the soil. The bamboo canes are also then fixed at the top of my existing frames that are on the bed, and these are actually fixed with hinges onto the bed, so it's quite secure already, and that gives it much more stability. And then, of course, it's cross-braced at the top to give it even more strength. Now, how the Florida weave works then, because this was a new one to me, I hadn't heard of it before, quite probably because growing tomatoes outdoors is a new thing to me. So, I hadn't really been paying much attention, but it's actually really simple, and it goes like this. So there are stakes, as you can see, at short intervals to make this nice and stable. And then all of the plants are held with this horizontal string, and that's what's different about this. In standard structures, you use vertical supports. This one's horizontal. But as you can see, there are multiple layers, and I will add layers as the plants grow, so they're being supported at various levels as we go. And this didn't require any extras like clips, it was just the bamboo canes and string. Now, I got it wrong when I started. When I first installed this, I wrapped the string just around the outside of the plants and then brought it back again. But actually, to do it properly and give the most security, you weave it between. So you take the string around the outside and then the opposite side of that plant, and then the opposite side, and again the opposite side. And coming back again, you do the same thing, but obviously crisscrossing in the opposite direction. This is why it's also called a basket weave, because this plant is put through that way. When this plant is tall enough to need to go through, we'll twist the string over and the plant will go through. And you can see it creates this crossover like a weave. And that's what holds the plants. And as I say, we'll build the layers up as these plants grow. To build, and even the concept of this, was actually really simple and quite fast to do. But the hardest bit came down to the planting of the tomatoes. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? You plant tomatoes outdoors exactly the same way I've been doing it in my greenhouse in pots all of these years. There's no real difference. It was the fact that because I'm using this horizontal system, I had to get everything in a nice straight line so that the support worked properly. And that was actually more difficult than you would think. I ended up having to use one of the canes and draw a line and then try to plant to that. It's not perfect, but I did my best. Of course, if you like this type of thing, sow a little bit of love on that like button, because when you sow, we grow. Okay, so you're probably now wondering why these two random bits of string are on the side. Haha! Like all good gardeners, I completely miscounted the amount of plants I had. Even though I've been growing all these plants on for months, I completely miscalculated. And I ended up with these two really healthy, great looking tomato plants. And by that point, I'd given away all the ones I thought were my spares. So of course, none of my friends wanted plants by this point. So we decided we're just going to put them in pots and grow them. And as Kate joked, she built an extension for them onto the existing trellis. And it simply is these two extra canes that are cable tied in with string coming down, and that string was planted into the pots. It's the old-fashioned way of doing things, but that way the roots will grow through the string, holding it secure, and as the plant grows, just as you saw me do before, I'll clip the plants to the string and they'll grow up this string and get their support that way. So there you go. Not only did we build ourselves a whole tomato trellis, but we built an extension onto it for the spare plants too. So just how successful I'm going to be, I don't know, but I'm quite excited. Maybe you're growing tomatoes along with me, and maybe it's your first year and you just need some hints and tips. We've got you. Watch this video next. It's my guide to all things growing tomatoes. See you folks.